I'd like to give you an update on Metropole Luxury Coffin and a few other items that I'm working on right now. MLC, it's still in 4.3, which means that it hasn't progressed very far from last time. But I've since figured out many things, and some of them are due to another channel called How to Be a Great GM. Specifically, they talk about how to organize a 5-step process for organizing adventures and mini campaigns and other things like that. And I'd like to include 2 of those in the game MLC. One for the heist everyone will participate in, or heists, and the other for reforming the social system, because MLC is a cyberpunk game, and therefore we need to figure out how to live other ways. So, yeah, that's basically where MLC is right now. But because it's 5 steps, I need to think about things rather deeply, because it's not very obvious what each sub adventure will be. And I do predict that there will be sub adventures, that it will not be one long arc, although it will, at least in terms of heists, it will be one long arc in terms of changing the system. So, yeah, it's basically the 5-step method is introduction, learning about the item, or introduction or problem, learning about the item, complication or twist, learning more about the item or social problem, and then finally the final confrontation. This can be extended, it appears in many other forms. And you can essentially, it's a basic rising tension narrative. And I like that because it makes for a good game and a good structure for a game, as opposed to an open-ended, very loose organization, which, as you may recall, I tried before, utterly failed. So, it does require that I create some new general rules, but most of the work is in the rules that I will, or rules or suggestions I will provide the game master, or suggestions most likely, in terms of here's how to construct your adventure. And I'll be trying to take the game master through every step in the process. So, yeah, that said, I've been working on MLC for a long time now. I first made it in 2008 or 2010. No, 2010. 12 years ago. Now, I didn't work on it continuously, but it still seems like it's getting overworked. That said, all of the problems that I'm encountering now will make me a better game designer for the future. Now, speaking of other ideas, I've also been working on a solar punk game, which, as many of you know, is sort of the happy version of cyberpunk, focusing mostly on ecological issues rather than money issues. It's very semi-anti-capitalistic. It's definitely more anti-capitalist and egalitarian society than we have right now. But examples could be like the Netherlands and Denmark, where you're actually supported by the government and or somewhat supported by the government, and it's sort of like that in more extreme fashion, but along with various modifications to how we deal with nature and the environment. And the punk thing about solar punk is that really this is not where we are right now. Um, and so a punk in this scenario is someone who is fighting against the way things are done and attempting to do things differently. Um, Along the same lines, the concept of using technology and meshing it with ecological functions uh, also has a lot of mainstream or a lot of mainstreaming uh, effects in Africa, where they tend to use junk and build things out of junk. This doesn't mean that Africa isn't very high tech, it is, but uh, they also seem to have the cyberpunk ethic of using technology for other uses, and that is something that cyberpunk really tries to promote, as well as having the idea of a very interconnected society. So, um, the funny thing about this is the reason why I picked solar punk was because I didn't like how horror games tended to use reality as an alternative. Um, so, for example, Vampire by White Wolf, it creates a dark world which is supposedly evil and dark and filled with nastiness. And once you consider how much we actually go through, it's not that dark. Um, but it claims to be dark. So, uh, what I'd like to do is set solarpunk up as the ideal and uh, the the ideal and the reality that contrasts with the horror. And so, only by showing the reality as being very good, very enjoyable, or at least satisfactory, is the horror is able to gain more purchase attraction as an awful thing. Um, and this is commonly done in Stephen King, which is he usually puts his stories in idyllic settings or possibly happy settings, and then shows the horror in contrast. Uh, in addition, um, I want to. I'm stealing something from Lamentations of the Flame Princess, thanks to Dungeon Craft, the channel Dungeon Craft, and something about each individual monster being created by the game master or whatever uh, for the adventure. And I want to also take H.P. Lovecraft's basic understanding of horror. Not in terms of these indescribable things. Well, it is in terms of these indescribable things. Because if you open up Call of Cthulhu, well, it does the one thing that H.P. Lovecraft tried not to do, which was picture exactly what the monsters look like, and yet H.P. Lovecraft would never have done that. So I'd like to do that, bring that back into the game, and yeah, so I'd like to bring that back into the game and try to riff off that. So yeah, that's basically what I'm working on right now. Um, the idea that I have for the game, I'm sort of going with interpretive cards, use of the tarot deck or subsections of the tarot deck, but it's not really firm yet. Uh, and so I'll have to keep you updated on that. The game itself has a working title of Solar Punk Haywire. I don't like that title, but it's the first thing I thought of, and it's stuck. Uh, when I come up with a new title, it will get a new title. But so that's just what I've been thinking about lately. Thanks a lot for listening, and uh, as the Dutch say, Dewey, otherwise known as goodbye.